Clontarf's hallmark, I suppose, for the visitor now is the promenade. It's like a necklace or something, or a ribbon around the neck of Clontarf. It's beautiful. But a little bit on the history of it, it wasn't always like that, and it's not that long ago since it wasn't always like that. Clontarf itself would have a deep history of being a holiday resort, because I know people like you are very young, but even like me remembers the 60s. That's when the 2-week holiday in the sun sort of started, and well into the 60s. Before that, you will get postcards of Clontarf saying, "Come to Clontarf by the sea," because it was and is a lovely spot by the sea if you get the weather, like we did the last 2 weeks, thank God. And you had Dollymount Strand, the beautiful Dollymount Strand, and a lot of the big houses you'll see along the seafront grew up as B&B and guest houses during that era.
My name is Tom Cooney. I'm from Raheny. I was born in Raheny in 1957. I've spent all my life in and around the North Bull Island. As a child, we'd come down here and we'd play in the sand dunes, and over the years I've come to have a pretty good knowledge of the area's wildlife, particularly the birds, but I'm a botanist. I became very aware of birds from a very early age, because essentially when I was living in Raheny, it was still very much countryside and farmland, and you were surrounded by wildlife. And so I took an interest then. And all through school I took every opportunity to avoid Irish classes and art classes, and I would take any project in any language or anything that involved nature on Bull Island. That's really where it all began. It was just being influenced by the environment as a child, because where I live we often hear the birds flying and migrating at night. We'd hear them calling in flocks, and I was always curious as to what they were. I'd be out at night as a child and I'd ask my father what the birds are calling. He wouldn't know, but I was always aware there was something beyond what was there. The North Bull Island is significant, not just in national context for the species diversity, but internationally it's recognised as well. It's a UNESCO biosphere reserve, which recognises how important it is for education. And the diversity of life is very good here, because it's never been sprayed with chemicals, it's never had any major disruption. It's a natural ecosystem, it's a natural grassland. From the insects in the soil, from the plants, and from the bird life and from the mammals, there's easily well over 1,000 species of organisms on the island, and that diversity is great. Because the big issue at the moment, particularly with climate changes and with human interference with things, is that biodiversity is decreasing. The range of species in general on the globally is changing. And that's why nature reserves are important, and that's why Bull Island is important. It's important because we have great diversity, and we need to study it, we need to understand it, we need to hold on to it. Because on the mainland we're losing it, in the industrial areas and in the farming areas we're losing it. And this over time is going to become much, much more important as a resource for other nature reserves in the future. So we need to protect it, we need to appreciate it scientifically, as well as simply getting pleasure out of it. The island is relatively recent in origin, historically, geologically anyway. It's just less than 200 years old. Sand used to accumulate in the bay. Naturally, it was being brought up by the tides. It's just every day, every year, every 100 years, it was just slowly coming up. And it began to gather on the north side of the bay, and shipping was running aground, and so they built a great south wall to try and deflect some of the sand out of the shipping lanes. And that didn't work very well, and then some years later they built the great bull wall, which is stretching from Clontarf out towards the sea. And once they built that, the sand that was already accumulating in the bay began to build up on the north side of the great bull wall. Once that happened, the island began to form. One of the things that makes Bull Island unique is it's on the shore of a capital city for a start. We have in 2013 over 1 million people in the catchment of Bull Island. Bull Island is not in the catchment of the city, because there's more wildlife and more species here than there is in the city. So the city is surrounding us here on the island. Everything that started to grow here 200 years ago or happened to come onto the island, we can document it. And so we now have a timeline where we can actually track the progression of species coming onto the island, how they interact, how the different habitats form on the island, which species go into them. So from a purely scientific point of view, it's a fascinating study area because it's growing. The island is still growing today. It's accumulating sand, there's sand dunes forming, it's still actively growing as an island. And so it's a great opportunity to look how species come onto the island. Do they float onto the island? Do the seeds come over that way? Do birds bring droppings over? How do some of the plants get here that normally you would only find 20 or 30 miles away? So it's a puzzle for scientists, and it always has been a puzzle for scientists how to get here. So looking at how the species have become more complex on the island in itself is a study. It's the study of biogeography. How do animals and organisms of all sorts, insects, how do they come to an area like this that is so recently formed? And we're still learning a lot because it's very rare in nature and in the environment in general to have a situation like Bull Island where we have, we know when it started and we can track the changes, the succession of species over time. It's also a site of national and international importance for many species of bird that come here for the winter, because in winter time you will find between 30 and 35,000 birds on the mudflats, because it's the mudflats are why the birds come here to the island. They feed on the mud and on the insects and the invertebrates in the mud. That's why in winter time it's really a great place to come. When the tide is coming in, you will see anything between 10, 20 or 30,000 birds of maybe 20 or 30 different types of species from all over. People come here simply to watch in springtime, to watch birds simply passing through. They might be coming from off the west coast of Africa. They might be seeing here and they might go on up to the Arctic. They might have a 12,000 mile journey and we're just seeing them for a day or two. And it's a wonderful place to see migration in action and to understand that the Bull Island is actually connected globally to so many places, whether it's in the Arctic itself, whether it's in the very bottom of South Africa, where some of our birds go to the very tip of South Africa, or else up to the Arctic. The Bull Island is just a hub for a lot of species, and it's critically important for that we actually maintain it and just observe the birds and enjoy it. From a hobby perspective, not a scientific or recording or mapping perspective, I think what I get out of is wilderness, wild areas, the feeling of generally silence other than wildlife. You're away from traffic, you're away from city sounds, you're away from pollution. Just simply being out early in the morning, watching rabbits, watching foxes. And I think it's something I think humans have got away from. But I think if you come down to a place like Bull Island, or to any natural area, any semi-wild area, and you come early enough in the morning, that's what the hobby involves. It's about seeing the unusual and about just having an inquiring mind and just getting pleasure out of it. And mainly listening, mainly even here now, just sitting here, you can hear about 4 or 5 species singing, and they're all doing it for a reason, and that alone is fantastic. Diversity is wonderful.
A normal day for a kite surfer in Dublin would, if you're a lucky worker, yeah, it's like it starts the day before by checking the forecast, and you check Derek Cartigan on TV3, and then you realize, oh, there's going to be like 25 knots southeasterly wind. So you're going to call your boss and say, I feel a bit sick and I might not be able to do it tomorrow morning. And then a normal day is to wake up very excited, grab a cup of coffee, put all your gear quickly in the boot of your car, drive from the city centers, arrive here. There is almost no one. It's 9 a.m. and then you put your kites up and you go for like a 3-hour sessions. The more the sessions go and you have like more friends coming, you're having this mighty crack we always talk about. And at the end of 12 p.m. then maybe you just go back to work. And you can come back here in the summer in the evening. So it's just the perfect lifestyle. And then you go to bed and you're very tired and you're relaxed. And you can get all your stress out from, that's the great things, one of the greatest things in kite surfing in general. This feeling of freedom, but this feeling of like well-being, sorry. you can feel stressed in the work and the recession and your boss doing blah, 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 lots of stress. You get out there, you just focus on your riding and kite surfing and you forget about everything else. So for 2 or 3 hours on your day, you're completely free. And then you come back and you're more relaxed and you can be more efficient back to work. So what's kite surfing? Kite surfing is one of the trendiest and latest water sports. It's about 12, 13 years old now, still a very new sport. And basically you're just using the power of the wind with a big kite, and you have a board attached to your feet and you can ride the oceans on the flat waters, on the waves, like what we can see in the background. The people who are interested in kite surfing, like at the beginning kite surfing was considered as skateboarding, so not again criticized for skateboarding, but like people are saying, oh, it's only for the young guys who wants to play around everything. Kite surfing is really from 7 to 77 years old, and anyone can kite surf as long as you can swim. And really you have anyone who wants to get into the sport, anyone that just wants to have something different. It's all about learning how to fly the kites. What we used to say to all our students, 90% of kite surfing work is about flying a kite. And as soon as you get used to and you know how to use these big kites, then you can use a skateboard, a surfboard, on the water, on the snow, a surf, anything. So that's true that after 4 sessions, when you get the proper tuition, the proper lessons, with the proper equipment and in the right conditions, after 4 sessions you can be on the board starting to plan go left and go right. It's actually the quickest and the easiest of the water sport compared to windsurfing or surfing. It's truly unique to have a spot so close to the city, but not only a spot so close to the city and 1 million people, but the fact that you have such a high quality spot. There is lots of big cities surrounded by nice spots and nice beach, but like not. So it's just a fantastic potential for Dublin. That's also actually needs still to be exploited because no, it's just we are very, very lucky to have that, to be able that after like 5 or 10 minutes driving from the city center, you can suddenly feel like here, I would say like almost in Hawaii or California in the nice day. Of course, it's not like sunny every day, but that's also the price we pay to have a quiet spot, you know. It would be like 25 or 30 degrees, it would be very, very crowded, and that would lose a lot of charm. It's like going on the West Coast, and when you go surfing, you're not overcrowded, or you don't have like 50 people around you, and then the atmosphere is changing. No, you go, you're almost on your own, and that's perfect. Here in Dolimont Beach, well, you have different beaches around Dublin. That's the crowdiest, that's the most popular kite surfing spot in Ireland and in Dublin, and a busy day could be like 100, 150 kite surfers, so you still have lots of room to evolve there. Bull Island is unique, and Ireland is unique in general for water sports, but Bull Island is a real gift from Mother Nature because it's just, there's so much space. As we can see in the back, it's just all the perfect ingredients for a perfect recipe for kite surfing or in general water sport. You've got also all the winds and lots of wind directions that can be rideable here, and lots of space. So it's a fantastic playground for kite surfers. That's what you need for kite surfing. You need lots of rooms. You don't want too many people on the beach. You don't want too many obstacles. You don't want all mountains or buildings or rocks. So that makes these spots like incredibly incredible. It's a singular sport, but it's also everyone has to look after each other. And I always compare that to surfing. It's very common to go on the surfing spot where you actually don't know too many people, because the surfer, and I'm surfing as well, so it's nothing about the criticizing, but it's just that the surfer doesn't need any other surfers to go. He can chat about the conditions, but he only has to get out of the car, go surfing, and you could spend 3 hours on the water without talking to anyone. The kite surfer, first things first, is actually to get some help to launch the kite. You cannot launch your kite, or it's not advisable to launch your kite on your own. So there is a bit of communication there. And especially in islands, everyone's kind of like look after each other, talks to each other. So, oh, what kites do you put? Give me, you can see like here in the back, you see really people helping each other. And same thing on the water, everyone has fun. And so there is a good communication. At the end of the day, when we're in the water, everyone is equal. Of course, everyone has different level, but everyone's gonna, it's not because you're gonna be a doctor or a minister or unemployed, black or yellow or white. Everyone is just like a kite surfer. And that's what we really love. When we come on the beach, everyone is on board short or wetsuit. We have a great day, we have a crap day, but like it's everyone in the same pot.
Clontarf's hallmark, I suppose, for the visitor now is the promenade. It's like a necklace or something, or a ribbon around the neck of Clontarf. It's beautiful. But a little bit on the history of it, it wasn't always like that, and it's not that long ago since it wasn't always like that.
We have the Bull Island, we have St. Anne's Park, we have the promenade here. So from that perspective, Clontarf is a very, very popular destination for people from a residential point of view. Its proximity to city centre is also fantastic, excellent.
Now, Fairview Park could be regarded as the beginning of the prom, and that was all filled in, believe it or not, with city rubbish in our times. The railway viaduct came across the open bay in the 1850s when it was built first. Now, it was 1900 before Fairview Park began to be filled in, and then they came right out along the prom because it was a messy foreshore. The wall we're looking at here wasn't there, so the sea came right up to where the houses are on the Clontarf Road.
I live in Clontarf as well as a business in Clontarf, and it's just an amazing amenity. You can see it here last week when the sun shone. It was just absolutely thronged with people, you know. And you can see it today, it just looks fabulous to get this many people out on a day like today, you know. And by about 3, 4, 5 o'clock this evening, it'll be absolutely packed with all the locals and people from surrounding areas enjoying the facility of the promenade. I mean, it's a huge linear park. I mean, people don't see it as a park, they see St. Anne's as a park, but this is just a fabulous park with the vista of the seafront as well to give it that extra bit of oomph.
There's a huge festival here today. The Business Association have been very busy for the last number of months planning it. There's a number of stands from all the local businesses who have food, goodies on offer. There's a huge Viking reenactment, and then there's lots of things for kids. So, but I suppose our part of it today is we have a stand here in principle to promote the plans for 2014 for the national commemoration of the Battle of Clontarf, which is happening next Easter.
Business Association was started with a group of shops and a group of business people, but it's got bigger and better, but it just does take a lot of time and effort, and it's to do with obviously encouraging people to your own businesses, but also to link up with the Residents Association and to be part of the community as well.
Well, I think there's a tremendous community spirit in Clontarf. We're a supermarket business, a family supermarket business that has been here for 50 years now almost, and the promenade is very much part and parcel of the local community. It's on a day like today, it's obviously a fantastic facility. It's right beside the Bull Island, which is famous for its golf clubs and nature reserve, but all in all, as a package, it's extremely important to the Clontarf area, gives it, it's synonymous with Clontarf. It's a wonderful facility to have.
Yes, as you see, today is a special day in the life of any area, and today is Clontarf's turn. It's the, if you like, the festival, and we call it a Viking festival because of the association with the Vikings. It's the festival for the residents and the Business Association, where everybody comes out here on the prom, close to the very historic wooden bridge, and display our wares. And going by past events, say last year we amassed that something between 15,000 and 20,000 people passed through. So it's a great day for the community. You show your wares, you get to know each other again, because as you well know about city life and that, you can be living next door to somebody all your life and never get to know them. So there is that. There's and there's a bit of the gathering about it as well, this being the year of the gathering. So to me it's a very important day in the life of Clontarf.
Well, today we're here trying to represent what we think Clontarf might have looked like around about the year 1014 when the Battle of Clontarf took place. So we have a selection of all sorts of crafts and people doing what we call living history demonstrations and displays. So we have replica goods being made and utilised as best possible the way that they were being used back then. So it's a mixture of drama, but really it's soundly based in the history. So we try to kind of do the fine line of education and entertainment, and hopefully we get it right, but it's trying to be informative and entertaining all at the same time. And I love it because history repeats itself. It's a family business. I work with my dad and I work with my children. My husband unfortunately passed away, but he's left a legacy, so this is something indeed that I would hope will be able to pass on to my children as well as impart knowledge to others. Some of what we do actually brings us into the wild and weird and wonderful, but it's part of what we have to do. Like that, we produce replica goods and we also supply items to, be it museums or people like ourselves who are trying to recreate clothing and all of the weaponry, etc. So I have here a selection of items that are specific to the Viking period as best possible. So for example, the simple cow horn we have here, these would be more like an ox horn, and cow horns would be the equivalent of Viking plastic. Basically they're keratin based, like your fingernails and your hair, so when they're put in hot water you can make shapes from them. They become malleable, and so you can make things like combs and spoons and toggles and all sorts of plates that can be used inside of lanterns like glass panes, but all from simple cow horn. But also the tips can be removed and they be turned into a blowing horn, so it's a sounding instrument. If you put more holes in it you can have an actual musical instrument. So the simple things that are now waste materials were really, really important during the Viking Age, so we would supply simple items just like that. Then we have slightly more advanced technology, which would be the likes of the simple nail. We take these things for granted now, but we would have people that would reproduce proper forged nails that can then be used to make everything from ships, which we have here on site today, but also chests, so we can carry and sit on and use these simple items. Again, we have people then who would need to try and recreate the jewellery and the clothing, and so we would supply things like snips and what have you. But of course, the most important thing I suppose really that people really like to see are things like the helmets and the swords. So that is something that we also try our best to supply. And again, at an event like this that we have today, which is the Viking Gathering of Clontarf 2013, we have people then who would supply but also use and show people how the different manoeuvres were actually done. So it's not really kind of a run at battle, but there's actual skill involved, and the guys then would train regularly in order to hone those skills. So yeah, it can be interesting sometimes. The Viking Age period, depending on what part of Europe you're in, could be as early as 600 right the way through in Irish terms to the late 11th century. You know what I mean? And you could stretch it and say nearly, well, till Strongbow arrived, because you had people who were still of Viking origin married into Irish people, but they still called themselves Ostmen, and they were specific natures. So it's very strange, but typically we do it differently here in Ireland. In front of me here I have a strange, weird and wonderful selection of things that might be better suited to the female arts at the time. Textiles usually fell to the woman of the household, or women, depending on what time frame you were dealing with. Christianity obviously means there'd be one woman, but there were slaves prior to that, and also second and subsequent wives as well. And the reason for it is straightforward and simple. There was a hell of a lot of work to do. People died much younger. The potential to have children was a lot less. The time frame in which you could do so, indeed having children itself was possibly the biggest killer of women, along with disease and accidents. But what I have here, everything from loom weights here, which would be on a upright standing loom. What they do is simply keep the threads that you're weaving with in position while you weave across with the weft. Then we have some other items like beeswax. Beeswax, great, candles, but it's also for literally a grease merchant. It would get rid of squeaks and all the rest of it. It's also then very helpful for waterproofing items like that. If you were sewing, perhaps in the setting that we are today, a Viking longship sail, which is probably made of wool, you want to use a more waterproof thread, so you would more than likely have beeswax on the threads to make the thread waterproof. What we have here then is a shears, This would be the equivalent of Viking snips, which I referenced earlier, but it's like scissors. So you'd have these hanging on your person, or at least on your belt. At different times during the Viking period, there were different styles, and unfortunately, we don't know for certain exactly what Viking women were wearing because there are very few finds. What has been found was a piece of clothing, and they think it was a piece of clothing which was used for caulking, which is basically the stuff that you shove in between the boards on a Viking longship to help it stay waterproof in the water. And this piece of clothing had a specific shape to it, and they think from trying to work backwards with this piece of cloth that they have an idea of a shape of Viking dress. But beyond that, there are some pieces, but they're later. So again, it's piecemeal information, trying to work backwards and work forwards and meet somewhere in the middle. And I don't think we'll ever have everybody in agreement, but there are some strange, weird and wonderful types as well.